Hi guys, this is Harshit Bharadwaj. If you can see me live, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to be evaluating some answers sent by you for the test one, and hopefully, right. So anyone who's logged in, feel free to send me a message, as in type me a hello in the chat box so that I know you are logged in. I can see your messages. So once we have enough students logged in and watching, we will start some answer evaluations. I have some scenes as in I have some answer sheets lined up that I've had a look. So this is for everyone who has recently joined the batch for answer evaluation, the the 14 test batch, where I've given out 14 tests in the group. So you all have those 14 tests, and those 14 tests cover all the texts, the entire syllabus of English literature optional. And we are setting up deadlines for every test. So the deadline for test one passed recently, and so Sonal is here, Sushmita is here, and Bhanu is here. Wonderful. So do let everyone else know in other groups and everywhere else. Once I'll be doing the evaluations, I'll ask uh, you for specific questions so you can respond. Right. So this was the structure. The week one, not test one. Not a lot of you could write the answers on time. Anyone who's watching this and would like to join this batch, this has just started. We've only done test one, and now everyone after today's session, everyone will be writing test two. Can anyone remind me what the test two is? I haven't had a look at the test for a long time. So write in the chat what the test two is, test two syllabus is. Awesome. So a lot of you have joined, six of you. Seems like a full house for the English literature students. Now, anyone who's watching this now, as I said, we have just started. We've only done test one out of 14. In all honesty, one, you don't need to have finished the entire syllabus uh, to join this. So you don't need to have already finished the entire syllabus. If you have, good. If you haven't, it's fine. As I say, just every test you are allowed 7 to 10 days, and in that 7 to 10 days, you can read the texts and take a couple of days to think about the texts, and then start writing answers. Okay. uh, you might say, okay, sir, that's not enough time to read, to make notes, and to understand. You're absolutely wrong. 10 days for one text or two authors is more than enough. If you're absolutely unfamiliar with the syllabus and you are from non-English literature background, you've never read any of these texts, yes, you might take longer. But if you're familiar with the syllabus and you read some of the texts, 10 days is more than enough. And there is a reason why I am imposing this time limit. If I don't do it, you will never finish your syllabus. Trust me on that. So 10 days, as in 140 days, which is almost half a year, almost 4 or 5 months, more than enough, more than enough to finish any optional. In fact, the entire preparation of UPSC, as per Mr. Subramaniam Swami, and that you could do it in 3 to 6 months. Anyway, so that's the structure. Those who are willing to join, as you know, that you can join. It's not too late, and yes, so second test is House for Mr. Biswas and Philip Larkin. Wonderful. So the key thing about this test series is, which now it has been running for almost 6 to 7 years, and this time I am running it primarily because I think I needed to find a way to continue it and continue helping whosoever I can. That's the only criteria this year, and I hope to keep doing it in the next years if requested. So it has been 5 6 years, 6 7 years since I've had this specific style of test series, 14, 16, 18 tests. And in my experience, even when I taught at an academy, and I did the entire syllabus at an academy, I think 5 times. I went through the entire syllabus, yeah, 5 times, 5 or 6 times. So, in my experience, if you write about 100 answers, that is like the upper limit. If you write 100 answers on an average, and that would be, I think every test has on an average 15 questions, right? So about 8 tests, 7 to 8 tests, halfway mark. That's the upper limit again, as I said. If you write 100 answers, about 7 to 8 tests, you will be there. You will be there. Your answer writing will be there, right? As long as you keep incorporating my uh, feedback, as long as you keep improving. And how do you know that you've arrived? How do you know that now you're writing a decent answer? How do you know that now I have the confidence, right? I can just refine it better. Hmm? So I call that stage is the 250 marker stage, 250 out of 500. So let's say 230 to 260 stage, 230 to 250. How do you know that you are there? Which 230 to 250 is interesting because depending on the day and depending on the paper, you can score 300 as well, right? But if you get to that 230 250 stage, that I call the bare minimum you should get to if you are studying with me, how do you know that you have reached that stage? How do you know my answers are now good and I can only tweak them? And there are so many other finer factors now. It's like the difference between the silver medal and the gold medal in the Olympics, or the bronze and the gold. It's very minute. On the day, it could be just centimeters or inches, and it depends on a lot of factors. Your form, what happens on the day, you know. So a lot of probable luck factors involved. But if you get to 250, how do you know that? Now, the sure shot way of knowing that you have reached that stage, and that will happen somewhere on an average when you've written 100 answers. Okay, most probably it will happen earlier, most of the times. If you consistently write, if you write at least one answer every day, and you consistently write for 100 days, you will get to that 250 marker stage much earlier, because consistency is a beautiful thing. But if you're writing random, and you're writing 5 questions one day, and then you don't do it for next 10 days, then you write four, still you end up writing 100 questions in about half an year, 6 months, 4 months. You'll get there. How will you know that you got there? You will be able to self analyze your answer. So when you get to, let's say, 50th or the 55th or 60th answer, and you go back, you look back at your first set of answers, if you can see what's wrong, if you can self analyze your own answers, we can all analyze and criticize other people's answers very easily, right? We can always criticize someone else, even in life. But a stage comes where you can, one, look back at your own answers, older answers, slightly older, like a month earlier, and you can see what's wrong, and you can see what you've improved. If you can get that, then you've arrived. And that also applies to life. If you self analyze, self assess, and you can compare your present self to the self 6 months ago, and you can see the difference, you got it, right? So that's the stage you want to get to, and I'm telling you, it's not very far away. You write answers consistently for 100 days, 90 days. 100 days is the upper limit. It will happen much earlier than that. That is my promise. If you write one answer, at least or two answers a day, you'll get there. In the beginning, do not worry about good, bad, or ugly. You will all write bad answers, ugly answers. But that is the whole point, because that phase needs to be processed. You cannot just jump ahead and skip to the perfect stage, can you? So that stage, the stage where you will be doing bad writing, bad answers, stupid, idiotic answers, where it will take you 1 hour to write one answer. That stage needs to be tackled. You need to go through it. The only way is through it. Okay, so the sooner you do it, better it is. It is always going to get better, like with everything else. Now, I'll House for Mr. Biswas and Philip Larkin is the next test. And it's a big book, but don't be misled by the size of the book. It's an easy book. It's an easier text. It's easier than Passage to India. Easier, there is nothing easier in UPSC syllabus, but relatively speaking, uh, it's big, but you can just rush through it very quickly. The language, the Creole language, and the accent might disturb you in the beginning, but you'll get the hang of it in the first few pages. Those of you who have tried. So the book is big, but it is not really complicated, and there aren't a lot of complicated concepts involved in it. But then I have paired it with shorter poems of Philip Larkin. So 5 poems of Philip Larkin. Those poems I won't say are simple, but at least they are shorter. Days and afternoons, what, 15 lines, 10 lines, 8 lines each. So shorter poems can definitely do it in 10 days. Now let's have the first set of answers that I have received are as expected not good, right? So I'll have a look at some of the answers right with you, and I hope you don't mind. Um, they, okay, so this is the first set of answers. Can you all see it like big screen? Yeah. Can you see it like the entire thing? I hope you can. Okay. Where is it? Okay. I don't know whose answers are these. That's the beauty of being anonymous. I'm sure you did not do it deliberately. Always write your name on the answer sheet for obvious reasons. Send one file, not two, three, four different files. Uh, Write in the sequence all things that we learned at school but somehow forgot to implement. And it's not just you. I don't know whose answers are these, and we don't need to know. So if you're logged in, if you're live, you know who you are. uh, do message me later on who you are. It'll be good to know. So first thing with this answer is, this is a 300 word. Okay, I'll read this question. This is a difficult question, interesting question. Lionel Trilling, a famous critic, doesn't know what to make of the dominant Hinduism of the last section of the novel. While E.M. Foster seemed to believe that it was architecturally necessary for the conclusion comment. Right? It's a beautiful question. Now, 300 words. So, the first thing first, right from the first answer you write, there are two things we are practicing for. One is a time constraint, and another is the word limit constraint. Okay. So the time constraint, don't worry about it now. The first time you're writing answers, the first 100 days, don't worry about it. The entire idea is to be able to write correct, relevant, succinct, simple, coherent answers. That's the idea. That is what we are learning. We are not learning to write faster at this point. It will happen later. But we need to be careful of the word limit. That constraint, the word limit constraint, we need to be really, really careful of, and we need to practice it. So 300 words, uh, nobody is going to count your words, okay? But there is a very specific formula. Anyone knows what that formula is? How do you calculate quickly without counting? I've talked about it many times. Hmm? Okay, so nobody knows. How do you calculate the word limit? The shortcut to ascertain that you're writing 300 words is to understand that the UPSC sheet, they expect you to write on an average 75 words on one side. Okay, so 75 plus 75 plus 75 plus 75. So four sides of the sheet will mean 300 words. Of course, if needed, you can take the fifth. That would mean, if you fill the entire fifth, that would mean around 70-75 words over. And we don't want to do that unless your writing is really big and you think you're writing less than 75, and it is very apparent that on one side you're not writing 75 words. So you can go to the fifth sheet, but we don't want to go over, and obviously we don't want to go under as well. So why we don't want to go over is because one, they said 300 words, simple enough, and second, anything you write over will eat into your time and clock is ticking. Remember? So we don't want to write single word, not a single word extra more than 300 words. So the good idea is keep it on four sides of a sheet. Now this writing is very small, but I would still give you four sheets, four sides of a sheet. But look at this answer. It is spanned across six sheets and densely packed right until here. It is densely packed, six sheets. It's very much 400, words, right? So don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. Second, the biggest issue with this answer. You know what the biggest issue with this answer is? Right at the onset. I didn't want to evaluate this, but this is a good example of what exactly not to do, because you will not be able to do this in the exam. Can anyone tell me what's wrong with this on this first page if you're looking at it? And I'll quickly show you the entire thing. You won't be able to read it obviously, but just looking at it, because we can all criticize someone else very easily. So what do you think is wrong with this answer? Hmm. Pattern. What is pattern? What pattern? It is not in straight line. Proper introduction. Okay, yes, it's got something to do with the introduction. You see it starts with a quote. It starts with a textual quote. That is an entire paragraph long, which is good 50, 60 words. Can you remember this quote? Now you prepared this answer and you probably had the book right in front of you. So you copied the entire quote. Why? We are trying to mimic exam room situation here. So this quote that is so long, you will never be able to remember it for the exam. And even if you can, we're not supposed to write such long quotes. Do you understand? Does it make sense? So this quote, whenever we're writing a quote, any exact quote, absolute quote, don't make it longer than a statement. Of course, in Pride and Prejudice, it starts with that quote of "It is a truth universally acknowledged." That is that is a very famous quote, so you can remember it. You can memorize it. Some quotes in some poems, couple of lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, you can remember it. Some Shakespearean quotes from King Lear or Tempest, yes, couple of lines, 3 lines, 4 lines. That is it. This long quote you will never be able to reproduce in the exam, and even if you started with it, it's just such a long quote. So that's the wrong start. Even after that, the question is about, there is a famous critic, Lionel Trilling, who's asking you about who the critic has problems with the dominant Hinduism of the last part. right? He did not have problem with the first part being the mosque and the second part being the caves, but he has problems with the third part being titled uh, being dedicated to Hinduism. So he's asking Foster, why is it such a predominantly Hindu section? And Foster is saying it is architecturally necessary. That's the question. Now, even after the quote, I disregard the quote. I don't want to read that. There is nothing in the first page, that is even coming close to understanding or trying to address the question. Okay. I painfully read the entire answer. It is a paraphrasing and the summary of the book. And this is exactly what will happen when you write wrong. I don't know who this student is, but this student is used to writing answers in the university style of writing answers. This is an MA English literature answer. Okay. Uh, this is exactly what not to do. One, you always start your answer with laser focused, pinpointed argument that addresses the question right away. No hanky pankying, no beating around the bush. Okay, you present your argument right away. It has to be very clear, very straightforward, very simple, very singular. No ambiguity. My lord, my client is innocent because one, two, three. It's as simple. It has to be very black and white, no grays. Does it make sense? I have okay. Nancy is asking questions. Uh, should we just write a few words of the quote and then last few words? Should we directly address the question or first write about the year? Uh, is the question asking you to write about the year the book was published, or when the author was born, or when did he get married, or what was his place of birth, or where did he like to go for a booze? Is the question asking you any of that? Please only answer what the question is answering. Relevant and appropriate bits. If it is relevant to include that E.M. Foster was born in such a such year, if it is relevant to your answer, to your argument. Otherwise, please no. Does it make sense? Always remember two words: relevance and appropriateness. Write it down. Write these two words down. Tattoo them on your back of your arm, back of your hand. Relevance and appropriateness. These are the two buzzwords for pure, absolutely coherent, succinct, uh, only what is needed kind of communication. Nothing extra. No fluff. Relevance and appropriateness. Write only what is relevant to the question asked, to your argument. Okay, so open it with an intro that addresses the question. Why do you think Foster said that this last part was architecturally necessary for the conclusion? Why? I have had very few students over last few years who have written this answer well. So please surprise me. Okay. So I hope, Nancy, your doubts are clear about. And yes, we do not quote this long. Whenever you're doing an absolute quote, as in the double quotes, it should be exactly what is there in the text. Yes, sometimes what we do is we can start with a quote, and then we we can skip the middle part of that quote if it's a long statement. In poems, we can do that. We can do the first line, and then the second and the third line are probably not relevant. So we put three dots, and then we write the rest of the quote, and then we end it. Or if why am I why am I explaining how to quote? You should go and look it on the internet. But if you are using a statement that that does not start with that statement, so the quote does not start, but you taking it from the middle, so you add the three dots in the beginning, double quotes, three dots, then the line, then the statement, and if it adds on full stop, and then the double quote closes. If it carries on and there is further that you don't want to include in your quote, you add three more dots and end it. That is the exact quote. Sometimes you want to bring in very relevant ideas and leave out what is not relevant. Sometimes you don't remember the quote, okay, and you use something what one of the characters said, but you don't remember the exact quote. That's where we use the single quotation mark, and it is called a running quote, right? So for example, uh, Dr. Aziz, while talking to Fielding, mentioned that, then you use a single quote, mentioned that he would rather live with the Hindus than with the Britishers. You close the single quote. So you kind of paraphrased what Dr. Aziz said, but you don't remember exactly what it is. But by adding the single quotes, you're telling the examiner that this is from the text, right? This is the paraphrased quote. Does it make sense? It's called a running quote. And if you use it well, it can be really, really, really effective. Really effective piece. Because most of the time you won't be able to remember exact quotes. Okay, so this single quote idea is an honest way of saying that I don't remember, but here is more or less what he said. There are no model answers. Someone, Sushmita, is asking, is there a model answer? There are no model answers. Your answer is your answer. You cannot write like anyone else. And see, this is a very good idea, model answer. I'll tell you why model answers don't work. Maybe they work in JS. Uh, it's like somebody is teaching you meditation. Okay, because I've been building a spiritual startup for some time. So somebody is teaching you meditation, and that teacher, that master, is at an advanced stage of meditation. So he's giving you, okay, 5 minutes you do this breathing exercise, 5 minutes you do this mantra, 5 minutes you sit like this, and in about 15-20 minutes, you should be experiencing like this. Now, you do exactly what the other person has told you, but you do not feel anywhere near what the other person is feeling. Why? You are following that person's modal answers. That is like a template answer that person has given you, the exact step by step. You copy it, but you don't feel it, what he's feeling. You will never feel it. Why? Because his level of perception and his stage of being is far different than yours, right? His growth is far different than yours. So even if he is giving you exactly what he is doing, you cannot see it until you get to that level. Does it make sense? So even if I write an answer which I think is a very good answer and a model answer, it will not serve you at all. Does it make sense? Why? If you understand why, you'll understand what I'm trying to teach you. There is no template. It has to be your way, your style of writing the answer. And you have to be able to understand. The basics are same for everyone. So if I'll write an answer, which is a perfect answer, and right at this moment I gave it to you, can you really assess that answer, that it's a great answer? You don't know what a great answer is, because if you knew what a great answer is, you will be writing it yourself. Does it make sense why model answers don't work for you? Because you won't be able to see what's good in it. You won't be able to see why it's a good answer. Because if you knew, if you can, then you will be able to do it in your answers. Does it make sense? That's why I've never written an answer, never gave any model answer. Because if I, for example, write an answer for this question, this concept, everyone else will copy what I wrote, my arguments. Do you know? That's how it happens in the GS classes and all the classes. So I always refrain from giving uh, too strong ideas about anything. Yeah, I don't want you to copy what I'm saying. Even it will still happens. It still will happen. That the way I look at the text, you'll start looking at the text in the similar manner. That's a thin line I have to be very careful about. So that is why I always throw a lot of different options of any concept. So I'll give you three, four, five different ideas. You have to find what you think about the text, not my idea, right? And there is no one right answer. So in this answer, long quote, it is absolutely overworded. This is a long answer written like it's a paraphrasing summary of the text. It is beating around the bush. I also tried to read the conclusion of it, and the conclusion is even more humorous. Religion, let's read the last bit. Religion in human history is upon us now. Okay, samsara and nirvana are exactly the same. What the ignorant call samsara, the enlightened call nirvana. Nagarjun, Buddhist scholar. Now, what is the relevance to the question? How does this entire end part? Whosoever the student is, you're trying too hard. Okay, it is obvious that you've read the text. It is obvious that you worked hard at this answer. This has not gone to waste. So whenever I'm reading your answers, anyone, and I'm saying it's not a good answer, it's not going to waste. Okay, this entire exercise of writing, everything that you're doing is adding up. Okay, so don't ever think that I wrote this entire answer 6 pages and sir said this is rubbish. No, nothing is rubbish. It is a process. Okay, then second question that I read, is it possible to be friends with the Englishman, was the primary concern of the Indians at the start of the novel. How does Foster suffer from liberal dilemma in a colonial setup while imposing the general theme? The entire first page gives me how, in a colonial structure, subjugation and colonial superiority is established to subjugate the natives. Okay, you build in context, you build in context, you build in context, and again it is so densely packed. Give some breathing space to the page. I read this answer. It is not a bad answer. The ideas are very, very fine. It is very clear. You have worked really hard. You've read around, but you are missing the basic point. You have to answer the question. That's the basic thing. And that has to go in the first part, the very first part of your answer. The first 50 to 100 words, not even 100, 50 to 75 words, which what we call an intro. That is the argument you present for this answer. So, what is this question? How does Foster suffer from liberal dilemma in a colonial setup while exploring the general theme? The general theme is it possible to be friends with the Englishman? What is the general theme? There's so many things they're asking you. What is the general theme? What is liberal dilemma? How does Foster suffer from that liberal dilemma within the colonial setup? So the first part of your answer is all about the colonial setup. So you see, there's so many phrases, so many ideas that you need to think about when you're thinking about this question. And then you derive your argument to answer this, which you haven't done. Okay? That was a big one. I think we've been on for about 45 minutes. Okay, so I will be sending you the evaluated copies back to Nancy, and you can get them. Next time, please mark your name and put all the files in one file, right? So I'll take another one. This is Sonal's, okay? Week 1, test 1. Short note of 150 words on the following: Orientalism. During 19th century, okay, this is fine. This is fine, Sonal. This is like safe answer. But you know what is missing in this? What is missing in this? By the way, thank you everyone for paying whatever you paid. So those who are just joining or those who have joined late and those who will be watching the recording, this course, this specific batch is on pay as you can, pay what you can model. Uh, so the fees is, as you know, 18,000, but it is entirely up to you what you can honestly afford, right? So thank you very much. You have been exceptionally kind. Okay, the next one. Where is it? Yeah. Idea of Orientalism has been discussed, but that is the only thing you've discussed. So this is the trick for short notes. Okay, there will be 5 short notes, 50 marks. They do not ask short notes like this any long. No longer they don't ask. They ask like this, that they only give you a phrase and you have to write about it. Now the short notes have become questions, right? So it's a specific question. So whatever idea or a secondary topic they're asking in the short note, like Orientalism, we have to always connect it with the text in the syllabus and illustrate and exemplify with the textual references. Always remember this. So a short note is not simply a place where you have to just dish out a definition a conceptual definition. It is a place where you'll have to tie in the conceptual applicable understanding with the text. So there is a reason why this short note is in paper one, test one, because we have passage to India. So Orientalism, even though it can apply to any text that is relevant to post-colonial theory or colonialism, but with passage to India, it is very relevant. So you have given the context of what Orientalism is. You have talked about Edward Said's book Orientalism, which is very important. Now you needed to connect it and exemplify it with the Passage to India by E.M. Foster. Every short note, we talk about the relevant text. For example, in paper one, there is a topic which is almost every year, without fail, they ask you about Victorian morality, place of women in the Victorian society, feminism. There will always be a short note on along these lines, because we have four novels in paper one that have those themes: Pride and Prejudice, Hard Times, and Mail on the Floss, and which one is Tess? Four. So when they say Victorian morality, well, a lot of students just write a Wikipedia note on Victorian morality. Wrong. You'll get probably 2 marks out of 10. But if you bring in and exemplify Victorian morality as you understand based on your reading of the texts in the syllabus, this is exactly what the notification, syllabus notification asks you to do. First hand reading of the text. Based on the first hand reading of the text, you discuss these topics. Your demonstrate your understanding of the secondary topics based on the first hand reading of the text. Mota mota, this is what UPSC has asked you. Okay, I'm asking you Victorian morality based on the first hand reading of the text. What do you understand Victorian morality? How do you understand about it? Anything about it? Now you have to demonstrate your understanding of the topic based on the first hand reading of the text. इसको बहुत ध्यान से समझे आप. बार बार मैं रिपीट कर रहा हूँ. You have to demonstrate the first hand reading of the text. कैसे demonstrate करोगे? अगर आपने first hand reading नहीं की है, तो आप you won't be able to demonstrate. That is why I am hell bent on asking you to read the original text, right? And we have to develop our understanding of the secondary topics from the first hand reading of the text. So syllabus की copy should be there on your wall. Secondary topics की copy should be there on your wall. Every text has 4 to 5 concepts, right? That should be there on the wall. So when you're reading the text, you keep in mind that I want to understand more about Orientalism, how Orientalism works. I have to understand that. How do I understand Orientalism based on my reading of Passage to India? Right? Theme of the poem September 1: Fear and uncertainty of the time. Okay, you have to take at least full 2 pages, Sonal. So this is 150 words. So take at least 2 pages in full to make it 150 words. And in this poem questions, there are 5 questions in paper 2 that are about the poetry questions. They'll give you a couple of lines or a passage from the poem, and you'll have to, you know, So what do you do in these poem questions, or what do you do in a question like this, a theme of the poem? Uh, this is straightforward. You're talking about the theme. So, but when you're given a couple of lines of the poem, okay, then what do? The two things you have to do. One, you have to start by creating the thematic context of that poem. So, if we are talking about T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of Alfred J. Prufrock, there are a couple of lines they've given. Let's say they've given you the mermaids won't sing to me. Those two lines, or let us go, you and I, uh, before the evening sky, like a patient is raised upon a table. They give you these lines, and that question says whatever it says. It They change it year on year. But there are two things invariably you'll have to do. You can note it down. One, you set up the thematic context of the poem. So, Love Song of Alfred J. Prufrock, what is the thematic context? Hmm? There is a character who personifies the disillusionment, the fragmentation, the disappointment, and the insecurity of the times, of the modern times. That is that character. That character personifies all these elements or qualities of the age. And throughout the poem, he is expressing these via words and action, mostly via lack of action, right? That's the thematic context. Let's say you can flash it out and you can talk more about it. Now you come to the lines. So within the entire thematic context of that poem, you place how these four lines or these two lines work. So these lines are the starting lines of the poem. So how do they work? So two things: contextual setup, thematic setup, and then within that thematic context, you place these lines and explain these lines. So basically, then you're connecting these lines to the wider, overall, bigger setup of the poem. So these lines could be from anywhere in the poem, right? So as random, they pluck out some lines and tell you, okay, talk about this within the overall context of the poem. So first you have to hash out the overall context, and then you place these lines a part of this is what the poet is talking at this point, and this is what these lines are saying. Does it make sense? Note it down and show me. Okay. Dr. Aziz's character sketch is fine. uh, UPSC will not ask you character sketch. UPSC will not ask you questions like this Greek myth of Trojan War. I ask these because you need to know these mythological ideas. You should know them, especially Helen of Troy, Trojan War, and these Greek myths. They recur throughout the syllabus. So good, not bad. What happened in the cave? Uh, the cave incident is important. It reflects insecurity and existential crisis. Well, that's not what the question asked. Hmm? The question did not ask whether it was important or not important. This is an absolute waste of time and space. We have to be very brutal here, Sonal, right? The cave incident is important in the novel. What does it mean? It's like you're passing time. Somebody, you are the DM of a city, and somebody asked you, "Okay, so what are you doing about the river situation in your city?" And you're like, "Well, the river situation is very important." That is the language of a neta. not the language of an officer of GOI. River cave incident is important. Then it reflects. We're not asking you what it reflects. We're asking you what happened in the cave. Now, you know why this question is one of the most intriguing questions in the entire UPSC syllabus that I've found. And I have yet to find a student. This is a challenge thrown at you. I've yet to find a student who writes this answer, not correct, but who does not write this answer like a summary. So 99.99% of the time, whenever a student has written this answer, first time, they end up writing what happened in the cave, they end up paraphrasing the incident. That's why this is the most interesting question. Now, at the onset, when you look at the question, what happened in the cave, this is what you feel like. They're asking you what happened in the cave. But that's why this question is the most intriguing and interesting question, because this question is teaching you how UPSC works, how the questions work at this level. They will never be asking you face value direct questions. So when they're asking you what happened in the caves, they're not asking you to recount or summarize the incident. Okay, so what are they asking then? Hmm? And you did exactly the same thing. You recounted the entire existential crisis. Um, it's not a bad answer, Sonal. I'm not saying it's a bad answer, but it is primarily you got tricked by it and you started paraphrasing what happened in the cave. So what they're asking is, two women went to the caves, intriguing, mystical caves with some rumors about them, and one of them felt dizzy and not really good as she walked in, Mrs. Moore, and she came out and she just sat outside. She wouldn't go back in. Another one, the younger one, more adventurous one, went in and she suffered a nervous breakdown and hallucinated or whatever happened, and she accused Dr. Aziz. So, what happened in the cave? You talking about existential crisis happened in the cave. That would be a right argument. Right, as in, I don't know. At least it's an argument that both the ladies came face to face with their own fears, existential fears, right? Because soon after, Mrs. Moore sailed back to England and she never reached England, right? She saw, she came face to face with her fears. So both the ladies, that could be an argument. So you need to make a very clear argument that what happened in the caves led both the ladies to an existential crisis because they came face to face with their intrinsic fears in the silence and echo, the play of silence and echo inside the caves. So it's almost as if their own thoughts and fears reverberated, bounced back off the shining walls of the caves, and amplified. And they almost saw their own fears and dilemmas in a human form. And because they were scared by these. Adela felt that she was being molested by someone. She was sure of that somebody did harass her or scare her so much. She was not sure whether it was Dr. Aziz, but there was nobody else there. So it was presumed it was him, right? So I almost answered the question for you. Mr. F.M. Foster, A.M. Foster is a liberal leader study of India as a colony. Discuss the complexity of colonial discourse. Okay. Uh, Looks like you haven't had a look at the classes that I've done on Passage to India. There's so many classes I've posted, videos I've posted online. I think E.M. Foster is the most talked about. Uh, so many classes I have. Most videos, I think the Passage to India is one text where I've talked most. There's so many videos. Please go check them out. So whenever you guys are complaining that there is the material is less, where should I go and check out? Please do check out the channel and see if the content is there. There might be some texts where I have not posted any videos or content. There might be. So we can do videos or content on that. Okay. So please do check this channel. And there is another channel that I'll share the links. Okay. I've talked about it, Sonal. Not on YouTube, on my channel. I've talked about Passage to India and almost all the concepts. Someone asked about the liberal dilemma. What is the liberal dilemma? Liberal dilemma is also you're talking about liberal dilemma here, right? You're talking about liberal dilemma. Liberal dilemma is that he's a liberal and he comes here um, as a liberal, as in he wants to have a wider, open, a non-conservative view of the Indians, and he wants to be friends, as in Cyril Fielding acts as a liberal spokesperson. Cyril Fielding is almost like E.M. Foster, and he wants to be. He works amongst the Indians. He is the most liberal and neutral, seemingly neutral person. But what is the complexity? How being a liberal uh, doesn't really work for him within the colonial setup. So, what is the colonial setup? We need to understand that. Colonial setup is intrinsically designed in such a way that there is always a superior versus inferior narrative set in. Because if you like, you wrote a good answer, the first set of answers that I read, and that liberal dilemma question, whosoever's answer sheet was this, I don't know whose answer sheet. You're talking about the colonial setup. It was irrelevant in that answer because you're taking too long. But you're talking about a colonial setup where a handful of Britishers need to overpower and rule over thousands of natives. So the only way to rule is to set up superior versus inferior uh, setting in the society. And so when you set, that is the intrinsic nature of a colonial setup, superior and inferior, and they do so by demonizing your religion, your language, your culture, your clothing, everything about your society. And they tell you you're absolutely bullshit and you're inferior. And when you start to believe that, and you start to look up to the colonizer, right? That's where they have won. So when Ian Foster comes to India with a liberal attitude, he's trying to be open and liberal, but the setup is such that Cyril Fielding is the principal, and Godbole, the native, who might probably be more intelligent and deserving than Cyril Fielding, is working under him. So is Dr. Aziz. Dr. Aziz is not working directly under him, but he's far more capable than his employer's calendars, major calendar. So there is that setup. And Cyril Fielding is the one who said that Indians are, what's that he says? They are the Orientals. Hmm? They can't help. He says this about Dr. Aziz, that doubting is in their nature. So he generalizes. He speaks from the vantage point of view of the superiority. So even though Foster wants to be liberal and look at everything from a liberal point of view, it is the setup is such that the vantage point he takes, or the character in the text, Adela, or uh, even Mrs. Moore, even Cyril Fielding, the most liberal character, the vantage point they take is the higher ground. That's the liberal dilemma. That's the complexity of the colonial discourse. Does it make sense? Channel name Neelam is this exact channel where you're watching the video, and there is another UPSC English literature optional channel that Nancy will share in the group. If there is anyone who's not part of the group, we can share that as well. Okay. Can we write about racial discrimination? You can write about racial discrimination as long as it is relevant. But that question, what happened in the cave? Uh, yes, you can add this as a point, because this also happened in the cave. So he was accused prima facie because he was an Indian. So it was presumed that he must have done it, right? Yes, the muddle, Sonal. Yes. So Cyril Fielding called India a muddle, right? So that's the liberal dilemma, and that is the complexity of colonial discourse. Nancy will share the groups. So let's end it here. If you have any more questions, uh, anything, you can let me know. I'll wait for your answer, for your questions here. And as I said, to rephrase, to rehash everything, uh, okay. Now I've received this email from Nancy where there are some more answers. That is fine. That is fine. I will quickly evaluate them tomorrow and send them back to you. Based on these feedback, you should do week two answers. I will rephrase and rehash the entire thing. Uh, so first of all, always remember that the answers, the questions that UPSC is asking, they are deeper than what they look. Do not answer on the face value. Spend time with the question. Every question is two questions. One that seems like a question, like what happened in the caves. That's one question. But the exact real question is underneath it. Mm. So if I were to expound upon this question and make it easier to understand for you, what happened in the cave section of A Passage to India, the actual question would be, it could be many questions. It could be, what is the symbolic significance of the cave section? And they have asked this. So you should prepare for the symbolic significance of all three sections. I have talked about it in many videos. Symbolic significance of the mosque, the caves, the temple. Okay. What is the symbolic significance of what happened inside the caves? Or what really happened inside the caves in terms of the metaphorical significance within the context of the novel. So that's how you understand this. Now, because it's such an open question, some of the times UPSC will ask you very broad interpretive question. Some of the times they'll be very specific. That's These are the two extremes they go. They used to be really broad 4 5 years ago. So thankfully, over the years since I started teaching, I'm absolutely sure about this, that maybe because they realize that students are not really getting any intelligent. Students are probably getting lower and lower marks, and they're not getting the paper. So they have to be truthfully, they have dumbed down the paper, the standard of paper. The best question paper that I like from last 10 years is the paper of 2016, 2016. That is the best and probably the hardest, toughest. I don't know who scored how many marks in 2016's paper, but 2016 was the wonderful, most beautiful paper. That should be the standard. But 2017, absolutely dumbed down version. 18, because of students who don't understand the question. So there is a broader question that lets you decide what angle you want to pick. Okay. So, like, who talked about this idea, racial discrimination? Milan. You can take this angle. You can base your entire answer on this, that this entire cave section is E.M. Foster's way of rehashing racial discrimination. But you have to be very clear in the intro. You have to tell me or tell the examiner, invigilator, that this is my line of argument. It's fine. If you're going to talk about the existential crisis and seeing and facing their fears, then you take that line and make it very clear, right? So in these broader questions, that is why intro is so super important. Whatever line of argument you're taking, this is the place where you make it clear. There is nothing right and wrong. As long as you can logically and textually prove it, back it, this is fine. You can back this argument, right? Dr. Aziz's racial discrimination, you can back it very much. Okay, so Bhanu is asking, can we do one session on each text and poem on Zoom where we can discuss more thoroughly on texts and then write tests, which you will evaluate like this only? Difficult. As I said, there are videos available that I have put together. So somebody make a list of that. For week 2, I'll pass on the group's leadership to Sonal. If you're ready to do it, let me know in the group. Nancy will hand over the group's leadership to you. The reason I'm handing it over is because it's work. So I can't expect one person to continue to do it. So if Sonal is ready, you take over the group's leadership for the next test, test 2, and you will. It's your responsibility to find all the videos from my this channel and the other channel, and list them. Give them a list. Give everyone a list somehow. The WhatsApp group is not really very useful. We should move over to Telegram, because in Telegram you can add in files. You can pin uh, more than one more than one links, and so Telegram we can broadcast, etc. There are a lot more features in Telegram than here. So let's put together a group in Telegram and add me, and Sonal, you take over from Nancy, understand what she's done so far. And thanks a lot, Nancy, for your time. Now to rehash, first of all, let's see how many videos of how many texts we already have. I'm sure there is a Philip Larkin video out there, and there is a House for Mr. Biswas video out there that I have done. The other channel is UPSC English Literature Optional. If you'll find, you'll see it. Otherwise, I'll send it to you. Okay. So that is the first thing. Make a list of sources already available. Second, anyone who wants to join, you can join in now. It's not too late. It's the fees is pay what you can out of 18,000. Um, Third, integrate, incorporate ideas that I've discussed in today's session. I've been speaking for last 80 minutes. It's almost 1 hour and 17 minutes. Incorporate these ideas in paper 2. Write at least couple of answers every day, and you don't need to write. Yes, Akanksha, you can join the group. I'm sure you joined. You mailed me this yesterday and whenever. Let's give the deadline from today. Let's give the deadline for 10 days for paper 2. Make a proper PDF. Write your name on every page of the PDF. Write with a lot of white spaces so it is easier for me to read and make my annotations. And you do not need to send me all the answers you write, but by all means try to write the entire paper. Okay, please write the entire paper, good, bad, or ugly, doesn't matter. Trust me on this. And then when you write all the 14, 15, 20 questions, send me the best 3 or 4. Okay, that is enough for me to understand. And Akanksha, you want to join, but you said you want to join the classes and all that. So the classes are not happening. This is the only thing that's happening, evaluation. And we discussed some ideas while evaluating. And please, this is the time. If anyone else want to join, they can join in. And I'll rehash again that the fees is 18,000. It is not free for all batch. Okay, it is pay what you can. That means what you can genuinely afford. I've talked about free for all mentality in the last session, right? So week 2 deadline, those who will not be responding in week 1 and week 2, they will be kicked out of the group. Okay. So 10 days, 3 to 4 answers, one PDF with your name. So Nancy is keeping a list of everyone who has submitted test 1 assignment, and now we'll have the list of who those who submitted test 2, and based on that, those who failed to submit at least one of the first two tests, they will be kicked out, whether regardless of whether you paid the fees or not. Okay. Paying the fees does not will not guarantee you will get any special favors, or not able to pay the fees will not uh, what do you say led you at any disadvantage. You are all equal. Okay. The whole idea is to get this sorted, and some of you go and crack the code. Take care. On that note, namaskar. Thank you very much, and have a